My name is Eduardo, and I am 32 years old. 2 years ago, I lost my mom to cancer, leaving me with her house savings and cherished family heirlooms. My dad wasted no time remarrying after her death, introducing a stepmother with 2 teenagers of her own. Everything seemed fine until they realized what mom had left me. What followed was a calculated scheme to pressure me into sharing my inheritance with my new siblings. Little did they know, I would not only see through their manipulation, but take decisive action. Before I get into the full story, drop a comment where you are watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure. Growing up, my mom Sarah was the heart of our family. She was the kind of mother who never missed a school event, who stayed up late helping with science projects, and who somehow managed to make even our ordinary weeknight dinners feel special. I can still remember her chocolate chip cookies slightly undercooked in the middle, just the way I liked them, and how she would leave little notes in my lunchbox throughout elementary school. She worked as a kindergarten teacher, and that nurturing spirit extended far beyond her classroom. My father, Robert, on the other hand, was always more distant. He worked as a corporate attorney, and while he provided well for us financially, he was emotionally unavailable most of the time. By the time I reached my teenage years, the contrast between my parents became increasingly apparent. Mom would ask about my day, and actually listen to the answer. Dad would grunt from behind his newspaper or remain glued to his laptop, bringing work home almost every night. Their marriage started deteriorating when I was around 15. The arguments began as whispered tensions after I went to bed, but eventually evolved into full-blown fights about Dad's emotional absence and Mom's frustration. I remember one night when I was 16 hearing Mom cry, "It's like you're a guest in this house, Robert, not a husband or father." When I turned 17, they finally divorced. The split was messy but not explosive. Dad had been having an emotional affair with a colleague. Nothing physical, he insisted, though Mom never fully believed him. As part of the divorce settlement, Mom received the family home, a 4-bedroom colonial in a good neighborhood that had been in her family originally. Dad didn't fight her on this. His career was taking off, and he quickly purchased a modern condo downtown. I chose to stay with Mom without hesitation. By that point, Dad and I had such a strained relationship that the thought of living with him felt foreign. Mom never spoke ill of him to me, even after everything. "He's still your father, Eduardo," she would say. "Our issues are between us." That was the kind of person she was, graceful even when hurt. Through my college years at State University, Mom and I grew even closer. I lived on campus but came home most weekends. End of Cobber. We developed Sunday traditions, farmers market in the morning, cooking a big dinner together in the evening. She supported my decision to major in business management, attending every presentation and proudly displaying my awards in the living room. "You got your father's head for numbers," she'd say, "but thankfully my heart." When I was 28, Mom was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The diagnosis came after she had been experiencing fatigue she had attributed to working too hard. The prognosis was initially optimistic. The doctors believed it was treatable with aggressive therapy. I still remember sitting in that sterile doctor's office holding her hand as she nodded stoically at the treatment plan, only to break down in tears once we reached the car. The next 2 years were a brutal battle. Chemotherapy ravaged her body, but never her spirit. I took a leave of absence from my job at a marketing firm to help care for her. We converted the downstairs study into a bedroom, so she wouldn't have to navigate the stairs. Friends from her school and church community rallied around us, creating a meal train and helping with housekeeping when I needed to step out. Throughout her illness, my father's involvement was minimal. He sent flowers once and called occasionally to check in, but never offered to help with appointments or overnight care. "He's busy with work," Mom would excuse him, but we both knew that was only part of the truth. 6 months before Mom passed, Dad announced he was dating someone named Melissa. Mom just nodded when I told her, saying I hope she makes him happy. Even then, facing her own mortality, she remained gracious. In her final days, Mom was at peace. Hospice had been wonderful, ensuring she was comfortable at home, surrounded by her treasured books and family photos. The night before she died, she held my hand and said, "Eduardo, I've arranged everything to go to you. The house, my savings, everything. You have been my greatest joy, and I know you'll honor my memory and how you use it." I promised her I would through tears. She passed peacefully in her sleep the next morning. The reading of Mom's will confirmed what she had told me. She left me everything. The house now worth about $450,000, her savings of $320,000, and all family heirlooms including jewelry that had been passed down through generations. Her will was explicit that everything was to go to me, her only child. The lawyer explained she had updated it after her diagnosis to ensure there would be no confusion. Just 4 months after Mom's funeral, Dad announced he was marrying Melissa. I was still deep in grief, sorting through Mom's belongings, at a pace that felt respectful to her memory. The news felt like a slap in the face, but I said nothing. The wedding was small, and I attended out of obligation, feeling like a ghost at the reception. That's when I first met Melissa's children, Jessica, 17, and Tyler, 15. They seemed nice enough, if somewhat entitled. Jessica was preparing for college applications, and Tyler was heavily involved in competitive baseball. Melissa herself was polite but distant with me, asking surface-level questions about my job and apartment, but never acknowledging my recent loss. The first few family gatherings were awkward affairs. We met at restaurants since Dad and Melissa were still settling into their new place, a spacious house in an upscale neighborhood. I noticed how Melissa would subtly highlight her children's accomplishments while asking very little about my life. Dad seemed transformed in her presence, attentive, and engaged with her kids in ways he had never been with me. Throughout this time, I was still processing my grief. I had returned to work but found myself having crying spells during my commute or while sorting through another box of Mom's things. I joined a grief support group that met weekly at the community center, which became my lifeline during those dark months. The inheritance sat mostly untouched, as I couldn't bring myself to make any major decisions while still feeling so raw. What I didn't realize then was that while I was mourning my mother, my father and his new wife were making plans. Plans that involved what Mom had left behind. Plans that had nothing to do with respecting her wishes or my loss. 3 months after Dad and Melissa's wedding, I finally felt ready to start making decisions about my inheritance. Mom's house stood mostly as she had left it. I had only cleared out perishable items and maintained the yard. The 4-bedroom colonial was in an excellent school district and had been updated about 5 years before Mom got sick. The kitchen featured granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, while the backyard boasted a garden that had been Mom's pride and joy. The financial inheritance included $320,000 in savings and investments. Mom had always been frugal and had invested her teacher's salary wisely over the years. Additionally, there was her jewelry collection, which included her grandmother's diamond earrings, several gold pieces from her mother, and a pearl necklace that had been worn by 4 generations of women in our family. My plan was straightforward: keep Mom's house as my primary residence. I had been renting a small apartment downtown, sell my lease, and use part of the savings to pursue an MBA, something Mom had always encouraged. The program I was looking at cost about $60,000, which would still leave plenty in savings for house maintenance and future investments. The first hint of trouble came during a Sunday dinner at Dad and Melissa's house. While helping clear the table, Melissa casually remarked, "You're so fortunate, Eduardo, to have such a financial cushion at your age. Most young people are drowning in student debt." There was something in her tone that felt pointed, but I brushed it off. Dad remained neutral during this exchange, but I noticed him nodding slightly at Melissa's comment. The conversation shifted, and I thought nothing more of it until the next family gathering 2 weeks later. This time, Melissa was more direct. As we sat in their living room after dinner, she brought up Jessica's college plans. "She's looking at Northeastern," Melissa said. "Such an excellent school, but so expensive. Almost $50,000 a year with room and board." She sighed dramatically, looking pointedly at me. "It's a shame how these costs have risen. Not everyone is lucky enough to have their future secured." Dad, who had been quiet until then, added, "Education is important. Families should support each other in achieving it." It wasn't what he said, but how he said it, as if testing the waters. Over the next month, the comments became more frequent. During a phone call about an unrelated matter, Dad mentioned, "You know, Eduardo, now that you have the house, you're really in a position to help out the family. Jessica and Tyler are your siblings now." The statement caught me off guard. They're my step-siblings, Dad. I barely know them. Family is family, he replied tersely before changing the subject. Meanwhile, Melissa began researching college costs for Jessica and Tyler, conveniently leaving printouts on the coffee table when I visited. One afternoon, I arrived early for dinner and overheard her telling Tyler, "Don't worry about the baseball camp cost. I'm sure we'll figure something out." Eduardo has been so blessed financially. The pressure escalated when Dad pulled me aside after a family movie night. "Son, I think we need to discuss how your mother's assets could benefit the whole family. Melissa's kids need college funds, and that house has 4 bedrooms sitting mostly empty." I was stunned. Mom left everything to me specifically. She was clear about that. His expression hardened. "Your mother didn't anticipate our blended family situation. She would want you to share." This conversation left me confused and hurt. Mom had updated her will after her diagnosis, making conscious decisions about her legacy. She had known about Melissa, even if not about their marriage. The suggestion that she would have wanted her assets divided among step-grandchildren she never met felt like a violation of her wishes. I tried to establish boundaries, explaining to Dad that I wanted to honor Mom's explicit wishes. "This isn't about being selfish," I told him. "It's about respecting what Mom wanted." Dad's response was telling. "What about respecting what I want? I was married to her for 20 years. The tension came to a head at Thanksgiving dinner. We had gathered at Dad and Melissa's house, and their dining room was filled with Melissa's extended family whom I barely knew. During dessert, Jessica turned to me and asked, "So, Eduardo, when are you planning to sell the house?" "Mom says it's too big for just one person." Before I could respond, Tyler chimed in. "Yeah, and colleges look at family assets for financial aid. Mom says we might not qualify because of your inheritance." It was clear they had been coached on what to say. Melissa smiled encouragingly at her children while Dad watched my reaction carefully. I felt ambushed and excused myself early, claiming a headache. That evening I dug out Mom's will and reread it carefully. The language was unambiguous. "I leave all my worldly possessions, including my house at 1435 Maple Street, all financial assets and personal belongings, to my son Eduardo Miguel Ramirez." There was no room for interpretation or conditions. The next day, I tried to have a reasonable conversation with Dad alone. I met him for coffee at a neutral location, hoping to understand his perspective without Melissa's influence. What he revealed shocked me. "Eduardo, I feel like Sarah's estate should have considered me more. The divorce settlement wasn't entirely fair. She got the house that we both paid for. Now that she's gone, some of that should come back to the family." "By family, you mean Melissa's children?" I asked. Dad sighed. "They're my family now, and you're my son. I don't see why this has to be so difficult. You didn't earn that money or that house. Sharing it would be the right thing to do." His words stung. Not only was he dismissing Mom's wishes, but he was also implying I was somehow undeserving of her legacy, the same legacy she had specifically intended for me. As I drove home, I realized this wasn't just about money or property. It was about respect for Mom's memory and her final wishes. And it was becoming clear that Dad and Melissa had a coordinated plan to pressure me into giving up what Mom had wanted me to have. Over the next few months, the pressure tactics from Dad and Melissa intensified dramatically. They began calling family meetings to discuss what they termed fair distribution of my inheritance. These meetings were clearly staged interventions, with Melissa presenting spreadsheets of projected college costs for her children and retirement plans that somehow included Mom's house being sold. "We're thinking the proceeds could be divided 3 ways. Melissa explained during one such meeting, gesturing to a pie chart she had created. 1/3 for you, 1/3 for Jessica, and 1/3 for Tyler. She spoke as if this were a reasonable compromise rather than an attempt to claim 2/3 of my inheritance for her children. When I pointed out that this wasn't what Mom had wanted, Dad countered with, "Sarah wouldn't have wanted you to be selfish, Eduardo. She was always generous." They began bringing Melissa's sister and parents into these discussions, people who had never even met my mother. At one particularly uncomfortable dinner, Melissa's sister Diane remarked, "In our family, we believe in sharing resources equally among siblings. It's the right thing to do." The manipulation took on new forms. Suddenly, Jessica and Tyler were instructed to call me Big Brother instead of Eduardo. "We're family now," Jessica would say, with a practiced smile. "And family takes care of each other." These were clearly lines they had been fed. The emotional manipulation became more pointed. "What would your mother want?" became Dad and Melissa's favorite refrain. She was a teacher who believed in education. Wouldn't she want to help Jessica and Tyler with college? This distortion of Mom's memory cut deep. She had been a teacher who valued education, which is precisely why she had set aside money for my MBA. Using her profession to justify redistributing her assets felt particularly underhanded. The situation grew worse when I discovered Dad had been telling extended family members that I was being selfish with my inheritance. My mom's sister, Aunt Patricia, called me one evening, concerned. "Eduardo, your dad mentioned you're refusing to help your step-siblings with college. That doesn't sound like you, or what Sarah would want." When I explained the full situation that Dad and Melissa were demanding, I sell Mom's house and give 2/3 of her savings to step-siblings she never met, Aunt Patricia was horrified. Sarah was explicit about her wishes. Don't let them manipulate you. But the invasion of boundaries didn't stop at manipulation. One afternoon, I drove by Mom's house unexpectedly and found Melissa's car in the driveway. Using the spare key I had given Dad for emergencies, she had let herself in and was touring the house with a tape measure and notebook. When confronted, she seemed unapologetic. "I was just getting measurements for when we redecorate. Jessica has her heart set on the master bedroom. The light is perfect for her artwork." I was stunned by her presumption. "Melissa, this is my house. Mom left it to me. Jessica will not be moving in." She smiled tightly. "We'll see what your father has to say about that." After this incident, I changed the locks, but the violations continued. During family gatherings at the house, I would find things rearranged. Melissa would move Mom's photographs to less prominent positions, or suggest certain furniture pieces might need to go when we update the place. The situation became even more brazen when Jessica posted photos on social media with the caption, "Checking out my future room, new beginnings college life." The pictures clearly showed Mom's bedroom with Jessica posing on the bed, as if the space already belonged to her. Meanwhile, college brochures with tuition rates highlighted began appearing whenever I visited Dad and Melissa's house. They would be accidentally left in places I was sure to see them, on the guest bed in the bathroom or next to my coffee cup at breakfast. The final escalation came when Dad suggested we meet with a real estate agent just to assess the market value of Mom's house. "It's a seller's market right now," he explained. "We could get top dollar and split things evenly before property values change." When I firmly refused, his tone changed. "Eduardo, I've been patient, but this is becoming ridiculous. I'm considering consulting an attorney about contesting Sarah's will. As her ex-husband, I may have legal standing." This threat led me to do some investigating of my own. I discovered Melissa had been researching inheritance laws in our state, even joining online forums about contesting wills. Printouts in their home office, which I glimpsed while retrieving my jacket, included highlighted sections on mental capacity requirements and undue influence claims. The stress began taking a significant toll on me. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and found myself constantly anxious about what new tactic they might deploy next. My work performance suffered, and friends commented on how withdrawn I had become. "You don't seem like yourself," my best friend Marcus observed over lunch. "What's going on?" When I explained the situation, Marcus was adamant. "Eduardo, this is not normal family behavior. This is harassment and emotional abuse. You need to protect yourself and your mom's legacy." Taking his advice, I scheduled a consultation with an attorney who specialized in estate matters. The consultation confirmed my worst fears. Dad and Melissa were likely preparing to legally contest Mom's will, using arguments about her mental capacity during cancer treatment to suggest she wasn't fit to make sound decisions. "Based on what you've told me, the attorney advised you need to document everything and prepare for the possibility of legal action. They're escalating because your boundaries aren't working." This conversation was a turning point. I realized I wasn't dealing with reasonable people, who would eventually understand and respect my boundaries. I was facing a calculated campaign to wear me down and take what Mom had specifically left to me. The true extent of Dad and Melissa's scheming became clear on a rainy Sunday afternoon in April. I had stopped by their house to drop off some tax documents Dad had requested. They weren't home, but Dad had told me to leave the envelope on his desk in the home office. As I placed the documents down, I noticed his laptop was open. I'm not proud of what I did next, but something compelled me to look at the screen. There, in plain view, was a document titled Inheritance Distribution Plan. My heart raced as I scrolled through the detailed outline for how they planned to pressure me into selling Mom's house and dividing her assets 3 ways. The document included bullet points, like continue emphasizing family obligation and guilt, involve extended family members to increase pressure, and research legal grounds for contesting. Will schedule meeting with Attorney Reynolds to discuss options. Target completion. Before Jessica's college deposit is due. I quickly took photos of the screen with my phone, feeling sick to my stomach. This wasn't just casual pressure. It was a calculated campaign with a timeline and strategy. But the worst discovery came when I noticed an email chain between Dad and their attorney. Opening it revealed their discussion about contesting Mom's will on grounds that she wasn't in her right mind due to cancer medications when she updated it. Dad had written Sarah was heavily medicated during her final months. We can argue she lacked capacity to make sound decisions about her estate. The suggestion that they would tarnish Mom's memory this way, claiming she was mentally incompetent when she had been lucid and deliberate about her wishes, felt like the ultimate betrayal. My mother had faced her death with dignity and clarity, making conscious choices about her legacy. Now Dad was willing to paint her as confused and incapable to get his hands on her assets. As I continued looking, I found text messages between Dad and Melissa discussing their strategy. Eduardo was showing signs of giving, and Dad had written. He seemed less resistant when Jessica mentioned college costs yesterday. Melissa had replied, "Keep pushing the guilt angle." He's soft-hearted like Sarah was. They were studying me, looking for weaknesses to exploit. The realization made me physically ill. I left without being discovered, but couldn't shake the horrible feeling of betrayal. Dad wasn't just asking for help for his new family. He was actively working to undermine Mom's last wishes and manipulating me psychologically to get what he wanted. The following weekend, things came to a head at a family dinner that turned into an ambush. Dad announced that he and Melissa had scheduled an appointment with a real estate agent to assess Mom's house. "We didn't want to bother you with the details," Melissa explained smoothly. "We know you're busy with work. You did this without asking me," I said, my voice tight with anger. "That house is mine. Mom left it to me." "Don't be selfish," Eduardo, Dad snapped. "This affects all of us." "How does it affect you, Mom?" "Left the house to me, not to you, and certainly not to Melissa's children." Melissa's pleasant mask slipped. "Those children are your siblings now. And that house is too valuable to be wasted on just one person when 3 college educations need funding." "They are not my siblings," I replied firmly. "They're your children from a previous marriage who never even met my mother." "I'm your father," Dad interjected. "What's mine is theirs now." "But this isn't yours," I countered. "It was Mom's, and now it's mine." That's when Melissa's true feelings emerged. "Your mother got more than she deserved in the divorce. That house should have been half Robert's. We're just reclaiming what should have come to us anyway." The room fell silent. Even Dad looked uncomfortable with her candor. "So this is about what you think you're entitled to," I said quietly. "Not about family at all." Dad's expression hardened. "Your mother wasn't thinking clearly when she made that will. The cancer medications affected her judgment. She would have included provisions for me and your new family if she'd been thinking straight." It was the same argument I'd seen in his email to the attorney, now spoken aloud without shame. The disrespect to Mom's memory was unbearable. "Mom knew exactly what she was doing," I said, my voice shaking. "She updated her will 6 months before she died, when she was still managing her classroom and attending school functions. Her doctor can confirm she was fully competent." "You're being ridiculous," Dad dismissed. "Sarah would want—" "Don't tell me what she would want," I shouted, surprising even myself with the outburst. You barely visited her when she was dying. You announced you were dating Melissa while Mom was still fighting for her life. You don't get to use her name to justify taking what she explicitly left to me. Jessica and Tyler, who had been silent until now, started reciting clearly rehearsed lines about family unity and shared resources. It was obvious they had been coached to appeal to my conscience. This stops now, I said, standing up. I've tried to maintain a relationship with all of you despite your constant pressure and manipulation. But I'm done. Mom made her wishes clear, and I intend to honor them. If you walk out that door, Dad threatened there will be consequences. We're prepared to take legal action. Based on the false claim that Mom wasn't competent, good luck with that. Her doctor, hospice, nurse, and attorney will all testify to her mental clarity. Melissa's face flushed with anger. You, ungrateful. I didn't stay to hear the rest. I walked out, got in my car, and drove straight to Mom's house, my house where I spent the night sobbing in what had been her bedroom. The pain of Dad's betrayal felt physical, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. But beneath the pain, another emotion was forming, resolve. I could almost hear Mom's voice, gentle but firm. Stand your ground, Eduardo. Some people will try to take advantage of your kind heart. She had taught me to be generous, but not to be a doormat. Now it was time to honor that lesson. That night, as I looked through old photo albums and read entries from Mom's journal about her hopes for my future, I made a decision. I would protect what Mom had entrusted to me, not out of greed, but out of respect for her wishes and her memory. Dad and Melissa had shown their true colors. Now I needed to show mine by taking decisive action. The morning after walking out of Dad and Melissa's house, I called in sick to work and made an appointment with Sharon Martinez, a highly recommended estate attorney. Unlike the brief consultation I'd had earlier, this would be a comprehensive strategy session. Sharon's office was warm and inviting, with certificates on the wall and family photos on her desk. After listening to my full story, including the document and emails I'd discovered on Dad's computer, she leaned forward with determination in her eyes. Eduardo, what your father and stepmother are doing is not just morally wrong. It borders on harassment. The good news is, your mother's will is solid. She was clearly competent when she made it. It was properly witnessed, and her intentions were explicit. But we need to take steps to protect you from their continued pressure. Over the next 2 hours, Sharon outlined a comprehensive protection plan. First, we would create an irrevocable trust for the financial assets, making it much harder for anyone to contest or access them. Second, we would document all instances of harassment and inappropriate behavior. Third, we would secure the physical property with legal and practical measures. Your mother wanted you to have these things, Sharon emphasized. Protecting them isn't selfish, it's honoring her wishes. That afternoon, I began implementing the plan. I visited my bank and initiated the process of transferring Mom's savings into a properly structured trust with me as the sole beneficiary. The banker explained that this would add a significant layer of protection against claims. Next, I created a detailed inventory of all the inherited items, with photographs focusing particularly on the family jewelry and heirlooms. I placed the most valuable pieces in a safe deposit box where they couldn't be accessed without my authorization. At the house, I had professional locksmiths change all the exterior locks and install a modern security system with cameras. The security company helped me set up alerts that would notify me of any activity around the property when I wasn't there. Had trouble with break-ins, the locksmith asked as he worked on the front door. Family trouble, I replied simply, and his knowing nod told me he'd heard similar stories before. I spent the weekend documenting every interaction with Dad and Melissa related to the inheritance. I created a spreadsheet with dates, locations, what was said, and who was present. I noted Jessica's social media posts about her future room and took screenshots before she could delete them. I transcribed the text messages I'd seen between Dad and Melissa and described the inheritance distribution document in detail. My friend Marcus, who worked in IT, helped me back up all this evidence securely. You need to treat this like a legal case, he advised, because it might become one. While gathering this documentation, I met with Mom's former oncologist, Dr. Karen Phillips. She remembered Mom clearly and was disturbed by Dad's claims that medication had affected her judgment. Your mother was remarkably lucid throughout her treatment, Dr. Phillips assured me. She made informed decisions about her care until the very end. I would be happy to provide a statement regarding her mental competence if needed. Similarly, I contacted Lisa from the hospice team who had cared for Mom in her final months. Sarah was one of our most aware and engaged patients, Lisa recalled. She was making clear decisions about her affairs right up until her last days. The idea that she wasn't competent is simply false. I asked both Dr. Phillips and Lisa if they would be willing to provide written statements or testify if necessary. Both agreed, without hesitation. With Sharon's guidance, I also drafted a formal cease and desist letter addressing Dad and Melissa's behavior. The letter outlined their inappropriate actions from entering my house without permission to making false claims about Mom's mental state and demanded they stop immediately or face legal consequences. This letter serves as formal notice. It read in part that any further attempts to pressure me regarding my inheritance, any unauthorized entry to my property, or any legal action based on false claims about my mother's competence will be met with immediate legal response, including potential claims for harassment and defamation. The process of standing up for myself was emotionally draining. Each night after taking another step to protect Mom's legacy, I would find myself exhausted and tearful. I wasn't just dealing with legal and practical matters. I was mourning the relationship with my father that now seemed irreparably damaged. During this difficult time, I found unexpected support from Mom's close friends. Her best friend Margaret invited me for dinner and shared stories about Mom I'd never heard before. Sarah talked about what she was leaving you, Margaret revealed. It wasn't just about the material things. She wanted you to have security and options she never had. She was so proud of you and wanted to give you a foundation for your future. This conversation reinforced that I wasn't just protecting possessions, I was honoring Mom's vision for my life. The most profound moment came when I was organizing papers in Mom's home office and found a sealed envelope with my name on it. Inside was a letter she had written during her illness to be found after her death. My dearest Eduardo, it began. If you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Please know that everything I've left to you comes with no strings attached. The house, the savings, the family pieces, they're yours to use as you see fit. I trust your judgment completely. She went on to explain her wishes. I've left everything to you because you are my only child, the greatest joy of my life. Your father has his own resources and has made his choices. My legacy belongs to you alone. Use it to build the life that will bring you fulfillment and happiness. That's all I've ever wanted for you. The letter concluded. Whatever challenges come your way, remember that you have the strength to face them. I've seen that strength all your life, especially during my illness. Stand firm in what you know is right. I am always with you in spirit. All my love, Mom. Reading her words, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't about money or property. It was about honoring Mom's explicit wishes and the love behind them. The letter became the centerpiece of my evidence file, the clearest possible statement of her intentions. With all these preparations in place, I worked with Sharon to develop a clear communication strategy for the inevitable confrontation with Dad and Melissa. We rehearsed responses to various scenarios, from emotional manipulation to legal threats. The key is to remain calm, but firm, Sharon advised. Don't engage with emotional arguments. Keep bringing the conversation back to the legal facts and your mother's explicit wishes. By the end of 2 intensive weeks, I had transformed from feeling victimized to feeling empowered. I had protected Mom's assets, gathered substantial evidence, secured professional statements about her competence, and prepared a clear legal position. I had also established a support system of friends, Mom's former colleagues, and legal advisors who understood and backed my position. The final piece of preparation was personal. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family conflict and grief. Dr. Martinez helped me process the complex emotions involved, the anger at Dad's betrayal, the sadness over our damaged relationship, the guilt that occasionally surfaced despite my knowing I was in the right. You're not just protecting assets, Dr. Martinez observed during one session. You're protecting your mother's legacy and your own boundaries. Both are valid and important. With my emotional, legal, and practical protections in place, I was ready for whatever came next. The ball was now in Dad and Melissa's court, and I would be prepared for their response. After extensive preparation, I was ready to confront the situation head-on. Rather than waiting for Dad and Melissa's next move, I decided to take control of the narrative. Through my attorney, Sharon, I arranged a formal meeting at her office, inviting Dad and Melissa via certified letter. The letter was professional but firm, stating that we needed to address ongoing concerns regarding Sarah Ramirez's estate and recent communications. Dad called immediately after receiving it. "What is this about, Eduardo? Why do we need attorneys involved in a family matter?" "This stopped being just a family matter when you threatened legal action and began making false claims about Mom's competence," I replied calmly. "The meeting is next Tuesday at 2. You're welcome to bring your own attorney if you wish." When Tuesday arrived, I was nervous but resolute. Sharon's conference room was pristine and professional, a neutral space where emotions could be contained by the formal setting. I arrived early, reviewing our strategy one final time. Dad and Melissa arrived precisely on time, looking tense. Dad had aged noticeably in the weeks since our last encounter, the lines around his mouth deeper than I remembered. Melissa was impeccably dressed as always, but her usual confident demeanor seemed forced. They had not brought an attorney, which Sharon had predicted they likely didn't want to escalate matters officially yet. "Thank you for coming," Sharon began after introductions. "We've asked for this meeting to address several concerning issues regarding Sarah Ramirez's estate and to establish clear boundaries moving forward." Dad interrupted almost immediately. "This is unnecessary, Eduardo. We could have talked about this at home." "Previous attempts to discuss these matters have not been productive," I replied, maintaining the professional tone Sharon and I had practiced. "This format ensures clarity for everyone." I then presented our case methodically. First, I distributed copies of Mom's will, highlighting the explicit language, leaving everything to me. Next, I presented letters from Dr. Phillips and the hospice team, attesting to Mom's mental clarity throughout her illness. "These statements directly contradict claims you've made about my mother's competence," I said, looking directly at Dad. "Making such false claims is not only hurtful but potentially actionable as defamation." Dad's face flushed, but before he could respond, I continued by reading Mom's letter about her intentions for her estate. The room fell silent as her words filled the space. "As you can hear," I said when I finished reading, "my mother was absolutely clear about her wishes. She wanted her estate to pass solely to me, her only child. She made this decision with full awareness and capacity." Next came the evidence of their campaign of pressure. I presented a timeline of events: the inappropriate entry into my house, Jessica's social media posts, the real estate agent scheduled without my consent, and finally the inheritance distribution plan I had discovered on Dad's computer. Melissa gasped when I mentioned the document. "You went through Robert's private files." "The laptop was open on the desk when I was dropping off tax documents as requested," I clarified. "The file was clearly visible. But that's beside the point. The document confirms a coordinated effort to pressure me into going against my mother's explicit wishes." Dad looked stunned. "You had no right." "Let's focus on the substance rather than how the information came to light," Sharon interjected smoothly. "The evidence demonstrates a pattern of behavior that must stop immediately." I then presented the security measures I had taken: the trust protecting the financial assets, the security system at the house, and the documentation of all interactions. Finally, I delivered the cease and desist letter. "This letter formally requests that all pressure regarding my inheritance stop immediately," I explained. "This includes any unauthorized entry to my property, any attempts to involve other family members in pressuring me, and any claims or legal threats based on false information about my mother's mental state." The silence that followed was heavy. Dad looked defeated while Melissa's expression had hardened into barely contained fury. "You've turned this into a legal battle," Dad finally said. "Is that what Sarah would have wanted?" I had anticipated this appeal to Mom's memory and was prepared. Mom would have wanted her wishes respected. She made those wishes explicitly clear both in her legally executed will and in her personal letter to me. What she wouldn't have wanted is for her memory to be tarnished with false claims about her mental capacity. Melissa tried a different approach. Eduardo, we're family. Families should support each other. Jessica and Tyler have needs. Melissa, I interrupted firmly. You and your children are my father's family, not mine. I barely know Jessica and Tyler. My mother never met them. She had no obligation to provide for them. Nor do I. Your children have 2 living parents who can support their education and needs. This is about money for you, Dad, accused, his voice rising. Your mother would be ashamed. Sharon stepped in. Mr. Ramirez's personal attacks are counterproductive. This meeting is about establishing clear legal boundaries. Eduardo is simply protecting what his mother explicitly left to him. I took a deep breath. Dad, this isn't about money. It's about respecting Mom's wishes and her memory. She worked hard for what she had and made conscious decisions about who should benefit from it. You're free to provide for Melissa's children from your own resources. What you're not free to do is pressure me into giving them what Mom wanted me to have. The meeting continued for another tense hour, with Dad and Melissa cycling through anger, emotional appeals, and thinly veiled threats. Sharon calmly redirected, each time emphasizing the legal reality. Mom's will was valid. Her intentions were clear, and their pressure tactics needed to stop. Finally, I offered a path forward. I value having a relationship with you, Dad. But it has to be based on mutual respect, including respect for Mom's wishes. I'm willing to rebuild our relationship if you can accept that my inheritance is not up for negotiation and stop all pressure tactics immediately. Dad was silent for a long moment. And if I can't accept that, then we'll need to limit our contact until you can. I replied, my heart breaking, even as I said the words. And if you pursue any legal action based on false claims, we'll respond with all the evidence we've presented today. In the end, Dad and Melissa left without agreeing to my terms, but also without making further threats. Sharon considered it a partial victory. They now understand you're prepared and won't be easily manipulated, she said after they left. That alone may deter further action. The aftermath was difficult. As expected, flying monkeys emerged from the extended family. Dad's sister called to tell me I was breaking his heart. Melissa's brother sent a scathing email about family loyalty. Even some mutual friends questioned whether I was being too harsh. I held firm, referring anyone who questioned me to the facts: Mom's clear wishes, Dad and Melissa's inappropriate pressure, and my right to honor Mom's legacy as she intended. Some understood, others didn't. I had to accept that not everyone would see my side. The first few months of separation from Dad were painful. Holidays were especially difficult. Thanksgiving passed with an exchange of terse texts, and Christmas brought a generic card from him with no personal message. I grieved the relationship we had once had, however, imperfect, and the relationship we might have had if he had respected my boundaries. During this period, I focused on healing and moving forward. I finally moved into Mom's house, my house, and began making it my own, while preserving elements that honored her memory. Her garden became my weekend project, and I found unexpected peace in maintaining the flowers she had loved. I established a small scholarship in Mom's name at the elementary school, where she had taught, using a portion of the inheritance to fund it. The Sarah Ramirez Bright Futures Scholarship would help children from lower-income families afford educational enrichment programs, something that would have made her smile. I also began my MBA program, attending evening classes while continuing my marketing job. The coursework was demanding but fulfilling, and I found myself thinking often of how proud Mom would have been to see me pursuing this goal. 6 months after our confrontation, Dad reached out with a brief email. I miss you, son. Can we talk? It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. After consulting with my therapist, I agreed to meet him alone in a public place, with clear boundaries established beforehand. Our coffee shop reunion was awkward and emotionally charged. Dad looked older and somewhat diminished. I've been thinking about everything he said after we'd exchanged pleasantries. I still believe family should support each other, but I went about it wrong. It wasn't exactly the acknowledgement I'd hoped for, but it opened the door to a candid conversation. I explained again how his actions had felt like a betrayal of both me and Mom's memory. He listened more openly than before, though I could tell he still didn't fully agree with my perspective. Melissa and I have separated, he revealed toward the end of our meeting. There were other issues beyond this situation with you. I've been doing some reflecting on my priorities. This news surprised me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Relationships built on manipulation rarely survive when that manipulation fails to achieve its goals. We ended our meeting with a tentative plan to talk again in a few weeks. It wasn't reconciliation yet, but it was a first step toward a new, more boundaried relationship. I made it clear that Melissa and her children would not be part of that relationship for the foreseeable future, and Dad, perhaps chastened by recent events, didn't argue. As I drove home from meeting Dad, I felt lighter than I had in months. Standing firm in my boundaries had been painful, but necessary. I had protected Mom's legacy, while also establishing myself as an adult who couldn't be manipulated or controlled. Whatever relationship Dad and I rebuilt would be on different terms than before, terms based on mutual respect rather than obligation or guilt. That evening I sat in Mom's garden, my garden now, watching the sunset illuminate the roses she had planted. I could almost hear her voice. "You did well, Eduardo. You honored what matters." In protecting her legacy, I had also found my own strength, and that might have been the greatest inheritance of all. 1 year has passed since that meeting in Sharon's office, and so much has changed. The garden is in full bloom as I sit on the patio, reflecting on the journey that brought me here. The house truly feels like mine now. I've repainted some rooms, updated the kitchen backsplash, and added my own touches while preserving the elements that remind me of Mom. Her photographs still hold places of honor, and her reading chair still sits by the living room window, though now it's where I enjoy my morning coffee. Standing up for myself transformed not just my circumstances, but my self-perception. Before all this happened, I tended to avoid conflict, often putting others' needs before my own. The experience of holding firm against such intense pressure showed me a strength I hadn't fully recognized in myself. As Mom had written in her letter, I did indeed have the strength to face challenges. I just needed the opportunity to discover it. I completed my MBA last month, graduating with honors. Mom would have been in the front row, beaming with pride. I used her inheritance exactly as she intended, to build a foundation for my future. I've recently accepted a position as marketing director at a company I've long admired, a significant step up from my previous role. The security of having the house and remaining savings has allowed me to make career choices based on growth potential rather than immediate financial need, precisely the freedom Mom wanted for me. My relationship with Dad has evolved into something new. We're not as close as we once were. Too much trust was broken for that. But we've established a limited, respectful connection. We meet for lunch once a month and talk about neutral topics: sports, my career, his health. He never mentions Melissa, who I learned has remarried and moved to another state with her children. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago, and Dad seems both saddened and relieved. Sometimes I wonder if he sees parallels between how Melissa treated him and how they both treated me, but we don't discuss it. I've maintained complete separation from Melissa and her children. Jessica occasionally sends social media friend requests, which I politely decline. Tyler once reached out asking for help with college expenses despite what happened, which I also declined. They've moved on with their lives as I have with mine. The experience taught me to recognize manipulation in all its forms. The subtle guilt trips, the loaded questions, the appeals to family obligation without reciprocal respect. These tactics now trigger immediate awareness in me. This heightened perception has helped me establish healthier boundaries in other relationships too, from work colleagues to dating partners. Perhaps the most important lesson was about the true meaning of family. Dad and Melissa frequently invoked family as a reason I should share my inheritance, but their actions demonstrated no real family values, no respect, no consideration for my loss, no acknowledgement of Mom's wishes. I've come to understand that family isn't just about blood or legal ties. It's about mutual respect and genuine care. This understanding has led me to invest more deeply in my chosen family friends who stood by me during the darkest moments. Marcus, who helped me secure evidence. Jasmine, who brought dinner over when I was too emotionally drained to cook. Diego, who helped me move into the house and paint the rooms. These people showed up for me in ways that demonstrated true family values. In honor of Mom's generous spirit, I've established an annual donation to the Cancer Support Center that helped us during her illness. Each year on her birthday, I sponsor a comfort day providing massages, quality meals, and art therapy for patients and caregivers. It's a small way of extending her compassion to others facing similar struggles. The inheritance was never just about money or property. It represented Mom's love, her foresight, and her desire to give me a strong foundation. By protecting it from those who would have diverted it from her intentions, I wasn't being selfish. I was being a faithful steward of her legacy. There are still moments of sadness about how everything unfolded. I sometimes wonder what might have been if Dad had simply respected Mom's wishes from the beginning. Could we have had a closer relationship throughout my grief journey? Could he have been a supportive presence rather than an adversary? These questions have no answers, but I've learned to accept the reality of what happened rather than dwelling on what might have been. My grief for Mom has evolved into a gentler, more integrated part of my life. I still miss her daily, but the sharp pain has softened into a tender appreciation for everything she gave me, not just material assets, but values, strength, and the example of how to live with integrity, even in difficult circumstances. The house that became the center of so much conflict has become a sanctuary. I've hosted dinners for friends, planted new flowers alongside Mom's perennials, and created a home office where I sometimes work on creative projects. The space has evolved as I have, while maintaining connections to its history. If there's wisdom I've gained from this experience, it's this: honoring someone's legacy isn't just about preserving their possessions, it's about carrying forward their values and intentions. Mom valued education, security, and independence, which is why she left me the means to pursue them. By using her gift as she intended, I honor her more truly than I would have by capitulating to others' demands. Standing firm against manipulation isn't selfish, it's an act of integrity. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary for healthy relationships. And sometimes protecting what's rightfully yours is the bravest, most honest choice you can make. As I watch the sunset from Mom's garden, my garden, I feel a deep sense of peace. The journey has been painful, but ultimately strengthening. Mom's legacy lives on not just in the material possessions she left me, but in the values I continue to uphold, and the life I'm building on the foundation she provided. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure? What helped you stay strong in the face of manipulation? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for your well-being. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone facing similar challenges to find their own strength.